All right, I've seen other creators try it, so I'm going to try it myself. I'm on the road. I was going to the gym, and I was like, I don't think I got a PFL thing up. And then the way my schedule works, I got to do, it's either now or never. Here we are. The PFL has basically changed their business model, not in the entirety of it, not in every way. And in some ways, it might seem insignificant, but it's actually pretty big. So, here's what we know based on a press release that they put out today. First of all, some of this you might know, some of this you might not know. Let's go over what we know, and you can decide for yourself how much of this is new. Elbows will be allowed in all PFL bouts. That's one. Two, Bellator is basically being sunset. It does not appear that it is being sunset in every single way imaginable. It seems like they might recycle Bellator titles, at least to maybe retire them this year. They're not clear about that, but as a brand, Bellator is now sunset. I'll just tell you, as somebody who worked on the Showtime side for a while, I don't speak for anybody who ever worked there. I'm only speaking for myself. Having worked there, that brand was dead when it arrived. The Bellator brand, by the time it arrived at Showtime, was already dead. It had no juice. So the fact that it's being sunset all these years later is kind of remarkable. Bellator served a very important role in the MMA landscape. They were kind of this plucky upstart for quite a long time under Bjorn Rebney, but they couldn't really ever differentiate themselves appropriately, and even when they tried, their business model kind of fell apart because the tournament structure doesn't really lend itself to that kind of business model inside of MMA. And anyway, you guys know the story, but it is finally, as any kind of functioning brand or, anything that they're going to, in any kind of serious way, keep alive, that part is dead. So that's 2. 3. They're going to keep a tournament they're going to keep a tournament business model, just not the way that they had been doing it. That part is over. The way in which they'd been doing the business model for tournaments has changed. We're not doing the points system anymore. And thank God that we're not. That was one of the most ridiculous, dumbass things imaginable. We were asking fans to do math, even arithmetic, it doesn't matter. You're asking them to do math, and more to the point, the math kind of took you in weird, and it was just an unnecessary, complicating layer that didn't really add much, if anything, really in the end. They're getting rid of that. However, they're keeping tournaments. I'll put this graphic on the screen here if I can. I'm going to look over on my side here. They're doing 8 tournaments beginning April 3rd, again April 11th, April 18th, and May 1st. These will be single elimination tournaments for, I believe, 8 different weight classes. The weight classes, as you can see on the screen here, women's flyweight, what's 125, men's bantamweight, men's featherweight, men's lightweight, men's welterweight, men's middleweight, men's light heavyweight, and then men's heavyweight. These will be single elimination tournaments, meaning the instant you lose, you're out. Of course, we all know in reality it probably won't work that way. There will eventually be somebody who gets injured, and then somebody else who lost maybe in the quarterfinals is going to have to fill in later on the semis or even the finals. It will happen that way. And so, I don't think that that's going to be necessarily an ironclad way that the business runs, but you get the idea. At least in theory, single elimination, and you're out. And interestingly, remember before, I'm going to make up numbers here, if you won $100 and then $200, sorry, what am I saying? If you won $10,000 in one bout and then $50,000 in another bout, and however many you earned, if you ended up winning the tournament under the old model, they would just fill you up until you got to $1 million. So you would win $1 million for all of the fights, but the number you would get to top you off to $1 million might have been different event to event, person to person, weight class to weight class. Now it's going to be a little bit more uniform. Now everyone is going to if you win the tournament, you're going to get a flat $500,000 fee. There's actually some other questions to ask about the money this time, because what the PFL wrote in their press release was it was going to be good for $20 million. This is going to be a $20 million season. And I would like to know how they're counting that money. And obviously that sounds like a lot, but how much of that is relative to what they're actually making, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I didn't finish the calendar. The semis, June 12th, June 20th, and June 27th. That of course, as indicated, will be your semifinals, and then your finals will begin in August, August 1st, August 15th, and August 21st. Yes. And then one note here on the rounds. Your quarterfinals and your semis will be 3 rounds. Your finals will be 5-minute rounds. Again, elbows allowed throughout the entirety now of the PFL brand. Couple of interesting notes to add to some of this, if I may. First of all, and I think this is one of the biggest ones, is PFL is bringing back, well, I should say not even bringing back really, activating their bantamweight division. This is great. They got a bunch of good bantamweights, including but not limited to Patchy Mix, by taking the Bellator brand. I'm sure that they could acquire others. There might be some who might drop down. In other words, they just from the Bellator brand, they got a ton of great bantamweights who they could not make effective use of in 2024. Now, what's interesting is I believe the last tournament that Bellator did was their bantamweight tournament. So there was bantamweight tournament in Bellator, then this weird downtime, and now they're going to pick it back up, and they're going to do bantamweight again in a tournament for the season. Okay, a little bit rehearsed and a little bit something we've seen before, but what I will say is, at least we're back to action. At least those guys are in rotation. You'll recall yesterday, Don Davis said they were unconditionally releasing Patricio Pitbull, which is a whole other question about what's going to happen to him and whether he fights in the UFC or any other place. But as it pertains to Patchy Mix, who was also very bitter, who was also very upset, it seems in theory he'll be, I'm going to imagine here, he's going to be part of this bantamweight tournament, and then they're going to be off to the races. Again, this is not my ideal use of what they could be doing at bantamweight or really any weight class, but this is certainly a step in the right direction, if for no other reason than bantamweight globally is a strong division, and they're going to keep it in rotation. They're going to keep it in action. That is certainly a boon to their brand. I don't see how that can't be. That's going to be good for everybody, including those guys who wanted more fights, and then including as fans and observers because of the strength of that division. They'll also be bringing back middleweight, which they haven't done either in quite some time, or I cannot. I know they've never done it for bantamweight, but I think middleweight's been gone for some time, if not. Frankly, I'll have to look this up. I don't know when the last time there was they had a middleweight tournament, but it not been recent at a bare minimum. And then again, World Series of Fighting had a bantamweight champion. Marlon Moraes was that, but they haven't had a PFL bantamweight brand and tournament going. So this will be the first for that. And then at least at a bare minimum, a return for 185, which also makes sense because, again, they got Johnny Eblin from Bellator. Keeping him and some of the other cohort folks in rotation makes a lot of sense. That's your broad overview. There's more to the story than just that. That's the broad overview. My general thought is, one, as I indicated before, Bellator has been dead for a long time. It was sleepwalking through an existence it couldn't justify. So sunsetting that is, frankly, in my mind, long overdue. Secondly, what I would say is, I think basically all of these changes, and when I say all, I'm going to put an asterisk by it, but I think in general, I like all of these changes. I like this tournament style better. I think the flat fee that they're paying for, by the way, I think in the previous tournament model, you would have had to win 4 to win up to $1 million. Now you have to win 3 to get just the $500,000 bonus. So it's actually a little, yes, it's a lower payout in most cases, but it's also less work, and that's good. So you like that. I think all of these changes are basically great. I think these are long overdue. My only criticism would be, one, I mean, think about what they're doing. They're just now in 2025 bringing their product to basically, not exactly, I mean, they're still keeping so many tournaments alive that this is not quite right, but on some level, this is what Bellator was doing before it went out of business. Not to say that that's a direct antecedent, but like Bellator had problems, but one of them wasn't that they were not trying to advance MMA in some kind of interesting direction or keep the brand in some kind of interesting direction. So they're bringing themselves up to a better level. I think it's long overdue, and I don't know if it'll be enough, but in general, I support it. I think this is going to be a better product. I think you're going to get better fights. People are asking, well, what happens if you get eliminated early in the tournament? My hunch is we're going to have to wait and see, but I think you're just going to get recycled back into subsequent cards. There's supposed to be title fights, as I understand it, at the top of all of these cards, or at least their best effort to put title fights at most of the top of these cards, I think is a better way to put that, so you can get a more regular reason to watch. These are good changes. These are good changes. There's nothing wrong with really any of these changes. My only thing that I would like folks to understand, and I know there's going to be folks, excuse me, I know this is a little bit, whoops, here we go. I know certain folks are going to bristle at this, but it's just the reality. These changes won't save them. I don't think these changes are going to save them. The reality is, and I've made this point a million times, unless there's a way for the PFL roster to cross-pollinate with the UFC roster, there is no way for the public to ever really understand who the PFL roster is and why they should care about them. It makes gaining legitimacy for the kinds of things that are required for popularity's sake all but impossible to do. For that reason, there is nothing they can really do to compete, and if they can't really compete, I don't know exactly how they're going to make money long term. Folks want to say that this is every single time a function of Don Davis making bad decisions. And I want to be clear, Don Davis has made any number of really bad decisions. If you want to write a big lengthy story or make a big long video about all of the things that Don Davis has done that did not make sense to you, believe me, I'll help you make it. However, look at him now. They're making good decisions. They're keeping some stuff that I don't necessarily prefer, but at least serve as brand differentiation. They're modernizing their rules. They're getting a cleaner product. They're getting a more simplified system. Like, dude, this is what you can say it's late, and it is, but they're not doubling down on bad decisions. They're making better ones. And I am going to affirmatively declare to you, I don't know that it will matter much in the end. Again, the future is hard to know. They could continue to change their business model. There's a lot of unknowns about the future. But this idea that, like, oh, it's an endless string of incompetent decisions that have caused this malaise, these are good decisions. These are the correct decisions. These are some of the better decisions that they could have made. It's not exactly leading the industry in a particular sense, but it's definitely playing catch up in the right way, and I think setting themselves up for a decent to good, maybe even 2025. So you simply cannot blame it in all ways as this like black hole of incompetence that never changes. It just takes and burns, and there's nothing else really to it. That's not right. I think we have not really paid attention to the ways in which the UFC monopoly has sucked up so much bandwidth in the industry. They make 90 cents of every dollar. It's very, very hard to make money if you're not them at all, unless you're like really, really, really different part of the business. They have made it impossible for basically any other party of a reasonable size to flourish. And I think what you're going to see now is proof of that. They've got a good roster. They've got a decent brand set up. They're going to have much better, I think, use of their talent. They have modernized their rules. They have they're on ESPN. I think you're going to see like that. Like you can get a lot. They have well capitalized, relatively speaking. They've made a lot. They've got a lot of things going for them, and they're making much better decisions now. If that doesn't get the job done, I think you'll have to. I don't know. You don't have to recognize anything. It will be harder to deny that, as I mentioned before, they're good for nothing except bad decisions. This is really not an accurate recitation of events at all. And once there is no Bellator, and I don't know what one's future even is at this point, and PFL is not there, what will you say then? That the only people who could ever make money in MMA were 4 guys in Las Vegas, 5 guys in Las Vegas? Is that really the argument you're going to make? Some might try. Anyway, This is really principally about the PFL. This is principally about what they have going on. There's a person walking up here beside me, just being weird as fuck. A good day for PFL. A good day for PFL, certainly. What it portends, how good, we shall see. But they're making the right call. They're making the right changes. I think this is better for their product. And if they're as well capitalized and as smart as they think that they are, and as much as they say they are, they should be able to do something with this. So we'll see how it goes in 2025. More to come. I'll see you all next time.